If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Every week, we share powerful stories of resilience, redemption, and rising above betrayal, stories that prove it's never too late to start again. Whether you faced professional setbacks, personal loss, or moments where you felt invisible, this channel is for you. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode, and join our growing community of viewers who believe in second chances and quiet strength. If you know someone who needs encouragement or inspiration, share this video with them. It could be just what they need today. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of Karen's journey resonated most with you? Your voice matters here. Thanks for watching. Now, let's keep building something meaningful together. I still remember the chill that ran down my spine when I got that calendar invite from Carla. Quick chat, my office. 4:30 p.m. Just hours after I'd finalized the biggest deal in Greenridge Tech's history, a $2 million contract with Civic Grid Technologies. It had taken me 6 months of late nights, flawless presentations, and relentless follow-ups. Everyone said Civic Grid would never sign with us. And yet, they did. Congratulations on the Civic Grid deal, Carla said with that tight, unreadable smile. Her voice was calm, polished, but it carried the warmth of a marble floor. Sitting next to her was HR Director Mitchell, staring blankly at his tablet. Thanks, I replied, still running on adrenaline. The whole team's buzzing. About that, Carla pushed a white envelope across the table. We're letting you go, effective immediately. My hands froze. She continued, performance concerns, difficulty aligning with company values, and a lack of team collaboration. I stared at her. I had just closed a $2 million contract, and they were firing me? Mitchell avoided my gaze as he slid the termination papers closer. My body moved on autopilot. I gathered my things, walked past familiar desks, and into the gray New Jersey rain. The storm outside mirrored the one building inside me. By the time I reached my car, my phone was blowing up. What happened? From Lauren in business ops. Tell me this isn't real. From Raj in development. She actually fired you. From Marcus in finance. The message that hit hardest came from Ethan, my lead technical strategist. Milo's Tavern. 8 p.m. Everyone's meeting. You in? When I walked in that night, 6 of them were already gathered in the corner booth. Ethan, Lauren, Raj, Marcus, Tasha, and Greg. The core team that helped me bring Civic Grid across the finish line. She's been trying to sideline you for months, Greg said, pulling up old emails. She scrubbed your name off half the client reports. She told senior leadership you were challenging, 2 days after your promotion, added Tasha. What Carla doesn't know, Ethan said, lowering his voice, is Civic Grid only signed because of you. And you remember the clause we fought to include? The 90-day exit. My heart picked up. Yes, I remembered. I'd insisted on a full 90-day opt-out with refund, no questions asked, because Civic Grid had been burned before. I never imagined it would become my insurance policy. At home, I poured a glass of red wine and opened the folder I called proof of performance. Screenshots. Emails. Praise from clients asking for me by name. My sales metrics. Records of Carla claiming credit for my deals. All of it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine. And more importantly, what we had built together. I opened a blank document. By midnight, I had a rough business plan. By 2 a.m., I had a name, Hawthorne Strategy Group. By sunrise, I had purchased a domain and drafted a brand concept. 3 days later, we met at my apartment. Quietly. No Slack messages. No email trails. I'm launching something new, I told them. No pressure to join. I know it's risky. For a moment, there was silence. Then Lauren leaned forward. What's the timeline? Because I already wrote my resignation. One by one, they all followed. All 6. That night, we began planning the exit. Quiet. Respectful. Professional. But Carla had no idea what we were building next. Karen Whitman sat at the head of her dining room table, now functioning as the heart of her new enterprise, when Tasha broke the silence. No drama. No client theft. No missteps that could follow us down the road, Karen said, her voice calm but resolute. What about Civic Grid? Asked Greg. They've called twice, already asking where you went. Karen smiled faintly. Let's just say I have coffee scheduled with their CTO tomorrow. They're not thrilled with how their account's being handled now. Ethan leaned forward. You're not planning to poach, are you? I'm not taking anything that doesn't walk to me willingly, Karen replied. I'm simply reconnecting with someone who happens to manage a $2 million budget. The next morning, Karen met Diane Ruiz, Civic Grid's CTO, at a corner cafe in downtown Newark. Diane's face was tense as she stirred her espresso. They stuck us with some junior rep, she said sharply. He doesn't even know how our security integrations work. It's a mess. Karen took a measured sip of her coffee. That's unfortunate. Don't be polite. Fix it, Diane replied. You and your team were the reason we signed. You earned our trust. I'm grateful for that, but… No buts, Diane said, sliding a business card across the table. We're exercising the opt-out clause. I've already informed your company's finance team. Legal's working on the paperwork. Karen stared at the card. She had expected this moment, just not so soon. So, Diane added, lowering her voice, when can you officially take us on? Because we want to be your first client. Karen couldn't help the smile tugging at her lips. As a matter of fact, Hawthorne Strategy Group is already operational. And just for the record, I didn't leave to take clients. Diane chuckled. You didn't take anything. We're choosing you. The following Monday, 6 resignations landed on Carla's desk. Karen's entire Civic Grid team, professional to the very end, gave 2 weeks' notice without theatrics or confrontation. Back at Karen's place, laptops buzzed atop her coffee table, whiteboards leaned against the walls, and notes cluttered every flat surface. Marcus called that afternoon, whispering, "It's chaos." Carla's shouting at HR. Jake says she tried to terminate our system access instantly, but IT blocked it. No transition plan. Stay professional, Karen said. We don't owe them a reaction. I get it, Marcus replied, but you should see the internal chats. Everyone's talking. The CEO scheduled an emergency meeting. Karen's eyes narrowed. The CEO? Not Carla. Right. He's asking about Civic Grid. Apparently, they've officially requested a full refund. Karen ended the call and leaned back. The moves were happening faster than expected. She hadn't forced a thing. They had simply fallen into place. Over the next 2 weeks, everything blurred. LLC registration, business banking, vendor contracts, insurance policies. Karen's apartment had fully transformed into headquarters. On the final day, her team walked out of the old office with quiet dignity and showed up the next morning at her door as employees of Hawthorne Strategy Group. Ethan deployed the secured internal systems. Lauren finalized onboarding documents. Jake had already built a custom CRM platform from scratch. They were lean, but unstoppable. Then the message came from an old colleague still at Greenridge Tech. Civic Grid refund processed. $2 million loss in quarterly revenue. Emergency board session called. Karen's eyes scanned the text, and for the first time since she'd opened that white envelope, she allowed herself a genuine, full smile. This was only the beginning. I couldn't hold back a small smile. I hadn't broken any rules. I hadn't recruited anyone unlawfully. I had simply started something better, and the client had chosen to come along. That same afternoon, a new text appeared. Unknown number. This is Grant Lawson, board member at your former firm. We should talk. The next morning, I found myself sitting across from him at a quiet bistro in Montclair. He stirred his coffee slowly, eyes fixed on mine. So let me get this right, he said. You closed the largest account in company history, and Carla fired you 3 hours later? I nodded. That's accurate. And then your whole unit resigned within 2 weeks. They made independent decisions, I replied calmly. And now Civic Grid has voided their agreement and signed with your new operation. I met his gaze. They activated a contract clause, one I added for their protection. Carla approved it herself. Grant leaned back, rubbing his chin, clearly unsettled. The board didn't hear any of this until last week's earnings review. Carla told us you were let go for underperformance. I took out my phone and scrolled through my archived files, sales reports, rankings, closed deals. I led in revenue generation 6 quarters in a row. Last year alone, I brought in nearly 45% of all new business. He exhaled heavily. This is worse than we assumed. Carla has a lot to answer for. That's your business, I said, standing up. I have one to run. Hawthorne Strategy Group was growing faster than I'd anticipated. By the end of month 1, we'd left my townhouse and moved into a shared office suite in downtown Newark. It wasn't large, but it was real. Civic Grid signed a new deal, $2.5 million, with a 15-month commitment. Word started getting around. I couldn't keep up with my LinkedIn notifications. Messages poured in from former clients and curious connections. I was in a meeting reviewing onboarding workflows when my phone lit up again, this time a message from a former coworker. Carla just got raked over the coals. She couldn't justify the lost revenue or the staff walkout. The CEO was livid. I locked my screen and turned back to the discussion. What was happening back at my old company no longer mattered. After the meeting, Ethan showed me something on his tablet. "You need to see this," he said. It was a snippet from an industry newsletter. Carla Jennings taking personal leave to refocus on long-term strategy. We exchanged a knowing glance. Everyone in business knew what that phrase really meant. I smiled. Let's focus on the Jefferson County proposal. 3 months in, and we were not just surviving, we were thriving. We'd on board 4 new team members, expanded into a larger office space, and earned a solid reputation for efficiency and trustworthiness. Civic Grid had already referred us to 2 other public sector groups looking for similar solutions. I was reviewing financials, already showing profitability, when my phone rang. Unknown number again. "Is this Karen Whitman?" a familiar voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "Karen, this is Martin Cruz, my former CEO." I hadn't heard his voice since before the termination. "I think we should meet," he said. Face to face. We arranged lunch for the next afternoon at a restaurant near the waterfront. That evening, I sat on my balcony wondering what he wanted. A threat? An apology? A buyout offer? The next day, I walked into the restaurant to find Martin already seated, looking tired and worn. The last few months hadn't been kind to him, and I had never felt more in control. "Karen," Martin said, rising to greet me as I entered the restaurant. "Thanks for meeting with me. I owe you an apology." After we placed our orders, he didn't waste time. "Carla's no longer with the company. The board voted last week to terminate her contract, unanimously." I gave a small nod but remained silent. I wasn't there to make it easy for him. "We've lost 3 major accounts since your departure," he continued. And during the internal review, it became clear that Carla had a history of sabotaging high-performing staff, viewing them as threats instead of assets. "That's disappointing," I said evenly. Martin leaned forward, his voice quiet. "We want you to come back. This time as our Executive Vice President of Client Strategy. You'd have full autonomy, equity, and a seat on the leadership team." I nearly set my glass down too hard. "You're offering me Carla's old job? With more authority." He nodded. "Also, we'd like to explore acquiring Hawthorne Strategy Group. Your entire staff would transition in with guaranteed roles." I studied his expression. He was serious. "Why would I sell a thriving firm we built from scratch in under 4 months?" I asked. "Because we'd be stronger together," he replied. "And to be transparent, we're bleeding top talent and can't afford to lose another major client." I told him I'd consider it, though my instincts already knew the answer. That evening, I called an urgent meeting at the office. Everyone gathered in our small but bustling space, Whiteboards full of ideas, empty coffee mugs on desks, laptops still glowing with energy. They want to acquire us, I said. The terms are generous. Equity, titles, full team retention. But we'd be working under the same brand that discarded us, said Aisha, arms folded. Carla's out, I clarified. Martin seems to have learned from it. Jake shook his head. They're just trying to stop their losses. I don't buy the sincerity. I looked around the room, the heart of everything we'd built. The hum of ideas. The drive. The sense of ownership that didn't exist at the old place. I think we should stay independent, Ethan said softly. This is our legacy, not theirs. One by one, the rest echoed the same sentiment. We had built Hawthorne out of grit, unity, and belief in ourselves when no one else did. Why trade that away? The next morning, I called Martin. We appreciate the offer. Truly. But we've decided to stay independent. There was a pause on the line. I was afraid you'd say that, he said. Can we at least explore a strategic alliance? I smiled. That's a conversation I'm open to. 6 months after being dismissed, I stood behind a podium at the Northeast Business Awards, accepting the Emerging Company of the Year honor. Hawthorne Strategy Group had grown to a 20-person team, settled into a modern downtown office, and built a client base ranging from public agencies to Fortune 500 firms. People say success is the best revenge. But for me, it was never about revenge. It was about proving our value, creating something real, and doing it with people who believed. This award belongs to my team, I said into the microphone. To those who stayed when all we had was an idea and a fold-out table. From the side of the room, I spotted Martin in the crowd. His company had been nominated for an innovation award, but left empty-handed. After the event, he walked up and extended his hand. Congratulations, he said with sincerity. You've built something incredible. Thank you, I replied. We stood quietly for a moment. Our partnership has been good for both sides, he added. I nodded. Smart move for everyone involved. They began forwarding smaller accounts our way, clients that didn't fit their new model but needed specialized attention. In turn, we supported their overflow on high-complexity projects that played to our strengths. By the time we hit the 1-year milestone, Hawthorne Strategy Group had grown to a 35-person operation and relocated to a full floor inside a sleek high-rise in downtown Newark. Our logo now gleamed in brushed metal in the building lobby. I sat alone in my office that morning, glancing at a framed picture of our original crew, gathered around my old dining table, whiteboard markers in hand, half-empty coffee mugs scattered across the scene. Everything had changed, and yet that foundation remained the same. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn alert. I tapped open the app and paused. Carla Jennings had viewed my profile. I hadn't given her a thought in months. Last I'd heard, she'd been having a difficult time landing anything close to an executive position. Too many whispers followed her about what went wrong at Greenridge Tech. I checked her page. Leadership consultant. It read often a placeholder term. Her endorsements were sparse, and no new recommendations had been added. Before I could dwell on it, a light knock sounded on the door. Techcom's team just arrived for the Q2 review, Ethan said, poking his head in. I set my phone down. Carla was history. Hawthorne was the future. Grabbing my tablet, I walked into the conference room where Diane Ruiz and her team were waiting. Ready to talk expansion? I said, smiling as I slid into my chair. Later that week, I found myself being interviewed for a feature in East Coast Innovator magazine. Is it true you're preparing for an IPO? The journalist asked, voice eager as she clicked on her recorder. I chuckled. We're just 18 months in. For now, we're focused on a Series A round to accelerate hiring and infrastructure. The draft headline made me laugh. Ashes to Ascent. How Karen Whitman built a $15 million firm after corporate fallout. A little over the top, but not exactly wrong. After the interview, I checked my schedule. Coffee with Grant Lawson, the former board member who had first reached out to me after Carla's dismissal. Now a partner at a New York venture firm, Grant had a different proposal. "You've done what many hope for but few pull off," he said over espresso. "A profitable tech consultancy, zero outside capital, and a reputation that grows itself." "We've been conservative," I replied. "We only grew when revenue made it feasible." "That's exactly why I want in," he said. "My firm would like to lead your Series A. No insane, scaling targets. Just support where it counts." I looked at him. "Why yes?" He smiled. "Because I watched what happened after you left. And I've seen what you're capable of when you're free to lead." The deal closed the following Tuesday, a $10 million investment to scale Hawthorne to its next chapter. By Wednesday, the press release hit every major outlet. My inbox exploded. One message stood out: Martin Cruz. "Congratulations," he said. "That's a huge step." "Thanks, Martin," I replied. "We just lost another VP. Would you ever consider coming back?" I laughed. "I just raised funding to expand my own company. What could I possibly come back to?" He sighed. "Can't say I didn't try. Your replacements haven't stuck. We still haven't recovered." I paused, letting that sink in. "I know a few solid recruiters," I said. "Happy to refer you." And with that, I ended the call and closed the door on that chapter for good. After the call ended, I sat quietly, thinking about how different everything might have been. If Carla had seen me as an ally rather than competition. If the leadership team had valued what we built, maybe Greenridge would still be thriving. But then Hawthorne Strategy Group wouldn't exist. Sometimes rejection is simply the universe redirecting you. 2 years after that unexpected firing, I brought the full Hawthorne team to a coastal retreat in Cape May to celebrate hitting a major milestone: $20 million in annual revenue. What started as a group of 7 around my dining room table had grown into a company of over 100. Our client list now included household names, public agencies, and Fortune-ranked firms. On the final evening, gathered around a crackling fire under the stars, Ethan stood up and raised his glass. To Karen, who turned her worst professional moment into the best decision of all our careers. The group burst into cheers. I felt a wave of emotion swell in my chest as I looked at the people who had taken this leap of faith alongside me. Later that night, back in my room, I scrolled through my news feed. A headline stopped me. Greenridge Tech to lay off 30% following acquisition. I clicked the link. The company that once dismissed me was now being folded into a larger entity. Dozens of roles were being eliminated. It was the end of an era, but no longer my concern. That chapter was closed. The next morning, as we were checking out, the resort concierge stopped me. "Ms. Whitman, you have a message at the desk." Curious, I walked over and was handed a cream-colored envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "You were right. I was wrong. Congratulations on your success." Carla, wait, she actually sent a note? Aisha asked on our drive back, raising an eyebrow when I showed her. I nodded. She's at the parent company that bought Greenridge. Feels good, doesn't it? That kind of validation. I thought for a moment. It's not really about that anymore. It's about growth, hers and mine. That afternoon, I got a message on LinkedIn. From Carla herself. "I've been following Hawthorne's rise. What you've built is remarkable. I learned some hard lessons from the way things unfolded. Ones I needed to learn. No response needed, just wanted to acknowledge your work." I stared at the screen for a long time. 2 years ago, it would have felt like a win. Now, it felt more like closure. After a moment of reflection, I typed back. "Thank you for the message. I hope you're doing well." Short, polite, sincere, human. No need to dig up old wounds. No need to be friends. Just mutual recognition of who we were then and now. She replied almost instantly. "I am different, but better." Sometimes the deepest transformations come from the most painful endings. As we approached our 3rd anniversary, Hawthorne Strategy Group was named one of Fortune's companies to watch. The photo shoot took place at our headquarters, which now spanned 3 full floors of our high-rise in downtown Newark. "How does it feel to be a success story?" the photographer asked, adjusting the lighting. I smiled, like we're just getting started. Because the truth was, success didn't look the way I once imagined. It was better because it brought freedom and purpose. And at the same time, less important because I'd come to realize the real prize was building something meaningful with people who shared that vision. A knock on my door. "Karen, TechCom is on the line. They're ready to review the new proposal." I stood, reached for my tablet, and smiled. Time to keep building. TechCom, our very first client, was still with us 3 years later. What began as a $2 million engagement had evolved into a $15 million annual relationship. As I reached for the phone, my eyes caught the small photo on my desk. Our founding team gathered around my kitchen table on day 1 of Hawthorne Strategy Group. From overlooked to unstoppable in just 3 years. "Diane, always a pleasure," I greeted warmly. "Let's talk expansion." What I didn't expect that week was the email that landed in my inbox the next morning. A major software conglomerate wanted to acquire Hawthorne for $200 million. I reread it twice before calling an emergency meeting with the executive team. "That's life-changing," Ethan said, stunned. "It's not just about the money," I told them. "It's about what we stand for: autonomy, integrity, purpose." "They say they'll let us keep operating under our brand," Aisha added. "For now. But how long until the promises fade?" I asked. We debated late into the night. The numbers were staggering. Our early employees, those who took the leap when there was no office, just an idea, would see major returns. Still, we couldn't ignore the feeling that this thing we'd built was still becoming what it was meant to be. The next morning, I called the CEO who had extended the offer. "We're honored by your interest," I said. "But we're not selling. We believe too deeply in what we've created." "Everyone has a number," he replied. "Maybe," I said. "But this isn't about valuation. It's about vision. That said, we're open to partnerships if that's on the table." After hanging up, I walked the floor of our Newark office. The hum of focused conversations, the sound of keyboards clicking, the quiet energy of momentum, all of it reminded me that some things can't be bought. At our quarterly all-hands meeting, I shared the news that brought the house down. "We're opening our first international office in London." Cheers erupted across the room. From that kitchen table to 6 countries in under 4 years, Hawthorne was going global. In the midst of the celebration, my phone buzzed. A message from Martin. "Midline Systems is officially closing. Just thought you should hear it from me." My former employer, swallowed whole by its parent company. The brand was disappearing, its assets scattered. I felt a wave of emotion. Not for Carla, and not for what they'd done to me, but for the loss of what that place could have become. Talent wasted by mismanagement. Purpose derailed by ego. After the event, Ethan found me alone in my office. "You all right? You seem somewhere else." I handed him the phone. He read the message and sat down. "You know this wasn't your fault, right?" I nodded. "Still, it's a shame. There were good people there. We used to be among them." He hesitated. "Actually, some of them reached out, looking for new opportunities." I thought, maybe. I smiled. "Have them send resumes. If we can offer a better home, we should." That's what Hawthorne has always been about: rebirth. Exactly 4 years after I was let go, I stood on stage at the National Business Conference, delivering the keynote address. "Sometimes, rejection is a redirection," I told the audience. "It strips away what isn't meant for you and pushes you toward what is." The crowd applauded. Behind the lights, I spotted a familiar face in the back row. Carla Jennings. After the event, she found me near the refreshment table. Time had softened her. There was humility in her expression. "That was incredible," she said. "And thank you for not calling me out." "It was never about that," I replied. "It never was." She nodded slowly. "I see that now. I was threatened. I thought tearing you down would elevate me, I said nothing. Some truths speak for themselves. She hesitated, then said softly, I was wrong. We all make mistakes, I replied. The important thing is what we take from them. I've taken plenty, she said. Too late for Greenridge, but not too late for me. She handed me a business card. It read, Carla Jennings, Executive Leadership Coach. Helping leaders empower instead of compete. Your story pushed me to reflect and reinvent. I built a coaching program to help leaders nurture talent, not fear it. 5 years had passed since we launched Hawthorne Strategy Group, and the growth was beyond what I had ever imagined. Offices in 12 countries, more than 500 employees, and annual revenue approaching $100 million. Yet the photo on my desk hadn't changed. The original 6 around a table in my dining room, full of uncertainty and hope. One morning, there was a knock at my door. Got a minute? Asked Jake. Always, I smiled. Jake had been my first hire in sales. Now he was our global VP. You remember that tech conglomerate that tried to buy us a while back? I nodded. They're back, he said. This time, they're offering $500 million. I let out a low whistle. $500 million? Yep. Life-changing money for all of us. I stood by the window, looking over the skyline of Newark. Set a leadership meeting. This isn't a solo call. That night, sleep didn't come easily. My thoughts returned to that conference room 5 years earlier. The emotionless way Carla slid over the termination letter. The sting of being dismissed after my biggest success. If she hadn't pushed me out, I might still be there, safe, small, building someone else's dream. Sometimes the worst day of your life redirects you to your best future. The leadership meeting to consider the acquisition ran over 6 hours. Every voice mattered. Every concern deserved space. With their infrastructure, we could scale faster, said Tommy. But what happens to our culture? Our autonomy? Asked Wei. What if we pursue an IPO instead? Suggested Marcus. That gives us capital without losing control. I let them talk, listening carefully. Hawthorne wasn't mine alone anymore. It belonged to all of us. Finally, Aisha turned to me. Karen, what do you want? I looked at the people around me. These weren't just colleagues, they were family. They had stood beside me when all we had was a fold-out table and a dream. I want Hawthorne to stand the test of time, I said. I want us to grow, to make a difference, but never lose who we are. In the end, we declined the offer and started preparing for an IPO. The road ahead would be longer, harder, but it would be ours. That evening, I sat alone and opened my journal. 5 years ago, I was let go for exceeding expectations. Today, I turned down $500 million to preserve something more valuable, our independence, our mission, our trust. Sometimes, the best form of revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something so meaningful that the world is forced to notice what they once discarded. The IPO was a success beyond anything we imagined. Hawthorne Strategy Group debuted on the public exchange with a valuation of over $1 billion. A unicorn born not from venture capital, but from rejection, resolve, and belief. As we rang the opening bell, I looked to my left and right. The original 6 stood beside me. This was their victory too. At our celebration luncheon, Ethan stood up with a raised glass. To Karen Whitman, who took the worst day of her career and turned it into a $1 billion legacy. I shook my head, lifting my own glass. To all of us. Hawthorne doesn't belong to one person. We created this together. Later that evening, I returned to my hotel room and opened a draft email I'd been editing all week. To Carla Jennings. Subject: Thank you. As Hawthorne goes public today, I wanted to say thank you. Not for what you did, because being fired was still wrong, but for what it forced me to become. That moment made space for something better. I hope you found your own version of that, too. I paused, then clicked send, not from bitterness, not from pride, but from peace. Because without that painful ending 5 years ago, Hawthorne never would have risen at all.